ISO 14001 and Environmental Management Systems EMS Training Module. Welcome everyone to the final crucial stage of our ISO 14001 journey, Performance Evaluation and Improvement. We're now in Clause 9, Performance Evaluation, which represents the check part of our Plan, Do, Check, Act cycle. This clause is all about answering a fundamental question. Is our environmental management system actually working? Is it effective? Are we achieving our environmental goals and complying with all the requirements? It's where we gather data, analyze it, and evaluate our performance to understand our progress and identify areas for further action. Clause 9.1 is the core of checking, monitoring, measurement, analysis, and evaluation. It means we need to determine what to monitor, how to measure it, when to do it, and when to analyze and evaluate the results. So, what exactly should we monitor and measure? Firstly, anything related to your significant environmental aspects. This includes tracking things like energy consumption, water usage, waste generation, and air emissions. Secondly, your environmental objectives and targets. You need to measure your progress towards these established goals. Thirdly, the effectiveness of your operational controls. Are those procedures you put in place being followed? Are the control measures actually working? Crucially, your compliance obligations. Are you meeting all your legal and other requirements? And finally, the effectiveness of actions taken to address risks and opportunities. Did that new process actually reduce risk as intended? Let's look at some examples. Monitoring could be a weekly check of the pH levels of your effluent discharge. Measurement would involve systematically recording your monthly electricity consumption in kilowatt hours or water usage in cubic meters. Analysis would be comparing, say, this month's waste generation per unit of production against the previous year's average to see if you're improving. And evaluation is the judgment step. Did we meet our target? For example, determining if the 10% carbon emission reduction target has been met by the end of the year. Building on monitoring and measurement, Clause 9.1.2 specifically requires evaluating compliance. This is a distinct and very important step. You must periodically evaluate whether you are complying with all your identified compliance obligations, both legal and other requirements. The process usually involves regularly reviewing your legal register to ensure it's up to date and all applicable laws are considered. Periodically assessing your operational controls against legal limits. For instance, reviewing lab analysis reports of your air emissions or wastewater discharge to ensure they are within your permit limits set by regulatory bodies. And, crucially, documenting any instances of non-compliance and ensuring they are addressed. For example, your team might conduct a monthly review of effluent water quality lab reports to ensure that all parameters, such as pH, BOD, and COD, are consistently within the limits set by the State Pollution Control Board. If a parameter is found to be non-compliant, this immediately triggers an investigation and corrective action, linking directly to Clause 10.2. Next, we have Clause 9.2, Internal Audit. This is your organization's self-check mechanism. You must conduct internal audits at planned intervals. The main goal is to get information on whether your EMS truly conforms to your own established requirements and, critically, to the requirements of the ISO 14001 standard itself. What's the purpose and what are the benefits of these internal audits? Their primary purpose is to verify if your EMS conforms to ISO 14001, if it's effectively implemented, and if it's being properly maintained. They also provide valuable information to management about the EMS's effectiveness. The benefits are numerous. They identify gaps or weaknesses in your system before an external auditor finds them. They drive improvement by providing objective data on areas needing attention. They help ensure compliance with legal and other requirements. They can increase awareness among employees by involving them in the audit process. And strategically, they prepare you for external audits, giving you a chance to fix issues beforehand. For instance, an internal audit might reveal that despite all the training provided, some employees in a specific department are still not correctly segregating waste. This immediately points to a gap, either in the effectiveness of your operational control or in employee awareness, which then needs to be addressed. Briefly, the internal audit process involves several steps. You need an audit program. This plans when audits will happen, how they'll be conducted, who is responsible, and what they'll cover. Ensure your auditors are competent, objective, and impartial. They should be independent of the area being audited. When conducting the audit, follow a structured approach. An opening meeting, collecting evidence, by observing, reviewing documents, interviewing people, and a closing meeting. Reporting is crucial. Document all findings, including conformities, what's good, non-conformities, what's wrong, and observations, areas for improvement. Finally, there's follow-up to ensure that any corrective actions identified are actually taken and are effective. The final element of performance evaluation is Clause 9.3, Management Review. This is where top management steps in and formally reviews the entire EMS at planned intervals. The purpose is to ensure the EMS remains suitable, adequate, and effective. Essentially, is it still fit for purpose, given our current context and future goals? This is the highest-level strategic review of your environmental efforts. Let's look at the inputs and outputs of this management review. Inputs are all the critical information that top management must review. The status of any actions decided in previous management reviews. Any changes in our external or internal issues from Clause 4. The performance of our significant environmental aspects. Our compliance obligations. How are we doing with meeting legal requirements? Identified risks and opportunities. The extent to which our environmental objectives have been achieved. Environmental performance trends. This includes non-conformities, monitoring results, audit results, and external communications like complaints. The adequacy of resources provided to the EMS. Relevant communication from interested parties. And finally, any opportunities for continual improvement. Based on all this information, the outputs of the management review should include clear conclusions on the continuing suitability, adequacy, and effectiveness of the EMS. Decisions related to any opportunities for continual improvement. Decisions about any necessary changes to the EMS itself, perhaps adjusting the policy, objectives, or even the scope. Decisions related to resource needs. Actions to be taken if objectives haven't been met. Opportunities to better integrate the EMS with other business processes. And any implications for the strategic direction of the organization. For a practical example, top management might review the environmental performance for Quarter 4 and see that their water consumption targets were not met. As an output, they might decide to allocate an additional budget for water-efficient equipment next year and assign a dedicated project team to investigate further opportunities for water saving across the facility. This shows their commitment to corrective action and continual improvement. We've checked our performance. Now it's time to act. Clause 10, Improvement, is precisely the act phase of our PDCA cycle. This clause is all about responding to what we've learned from our performance evaluation and proactively seeking ways to make our environmental performance even better. Remember, improvement isn't just about fixing problems when they arise. It's about continuously looking for smarter, more efficient, and more environmentally sound ways of operating. Clause 10.1, General, is a straightforward directive. Your organization must determine opportunities for improvement and then actually implement the actions needed to achieve the intended outcomes of your EMS. This is a general requirement to be proactive about improving both your EMS and your environmental performance. Clause 10.2 deals with nonconformity and corrective action. This is about what happens when things don't go as planned. A nonconformity is simply a failure to meet a requirement. It could be a procedure not followed, a legal limit exceeded, or an objective not met. When a nonconformity occurs, the organization must react to it immediately. Take action to control and correct it. Stop the problem. Deal with the consequences. Clean up any spills, for example. Then, crucially, evaluate the need for action to eliminate the cause of the nonconformity. This leads us to root cause analysis. Implement any necessary corrective action. Review the effectiveness of that corrective action. Update risks and opportunities in light of what was learned. And finally, make changes to the EMS if necessary to prevent recurrence. Identifying and addressing nonconformities happens through various channels. Our monitoring, internal and external audits, management reviews, or even external complaints. Let's use an example. Nonconformity. Monthly effluent discharge test results show BOD, biological oxygen demand, levels exceeded the legal limit for 3 consecutive months. Immediate reaction. You'd temporarily shut down the high-polluting process, increase the frequency of water quality checks, and immediately notify the regulatory authority as required. Control and correct. You'd adjust the chemical dosing in the treatment plant and conduct immediate maintenance on filters to bring the BOD levels back within limits. Once you've controlled and corrected the immediate problem, the most critical step for true improvement is root cause analysis. This means going beyond just fixing the symptom and investigating to find the underlying reason why the nonconformity occurred in the first place. There are various methods for root cause analysis, such as the 5 whys technique, where you keep asking why until you get to the fundamental issue, or using tools like a fishbone diagram, also known as an Ishikawa diagram. Let's continue with our BOD nonconformity example. Problem: BOD levels exceeded the legal limit. Why 1? Why? Because the treatment plant chemicals were not dosed correctly. Why 2? Why were they not dosed correctly? Because the operator used an old, uncalibrated measuring cup. Why 3? Why was an uncalibrated measuring cup used? Because there was no procedure for checking the calibration of measuring equipment. Why 4? Why was there no procedure for calibration checks? Perhaps the new operator wasn't fully trained on equipment maintenance checks. So, the root cause here isn't just the wrong dosing, it's the inadequate training program and the lack of a procedure for equipment calibration checks. Based on this, the corrective action would be much more impactful. Update the training program for all operators and implement a new procedure for daily calibration checks for all measuring equipment. This prevents recurrence rather than just fixing the symptom. Finally, Clause 10.3, Continual Improvement. This is the overarching principle of ISO 14001. It's about an ongoing commitment to make your EMS and your environmental performance better and better. It's a journey, not a destination. This concept is fundamentally built into the very structure of ISO 14001 through the PDCA cycle. Plan, Do, Check, Act. Plan. Clause 6. We establish our environmental objectives and the processes needed to deliver those results. Do. Clause 8. We implement those processes as planned. Check. Clause 9. We monitor and measure our processes and results against our objectives, and we report on what we find. Act. Clause 10. Based on the check phase, we take actions to continually improve the performance of our processes, and, by extension, our environmental performance. Let's illustrate with a simple example. Plan, we set an objective to reduce paper consumption by 10% in the next year. Do, we implement double-sided printing as the default setting on all printers and actively promote using digital documents. Check, we monitor our monthly paper purchase records and conduct internal audits to see if double-sided printing is actually being used. Act, if our target isn't met, we investigate why. Perhaps there's a lack of awareness, or maybe some technical issues with printer settings. We then update our training or IT settings to address those issues. If the target is met, that's great, but the act phase doesn't stop there. We might then set a new, more ambitious target, or look for other areas of paper reduction, like optimizing packaging in our supply chain. This completes the cycle and immediately starts a new one, constantly driving betterment. This cyclical approach ensures that your EMS is a dynamic tool, constantly evolving to deliver increasingly better environmental outcomes.